Welcome to the 26th episode of Dialogika. I'm Stephanie Tangkilisan.
And I'm Swedian Lee.
We're recording in a different place today, which is the offices of Stephanie Tangkilisan.
So if you hear traffic noises, it's because this is daytime.
And we're not in an isolated place, also with no studio budget.
Yes, So
anyway, this week we're going to talk about the ongoing case between the farmers of Kendeng and the authorities over the right to build cement factories in the Kendeng region.
Recently, farmers have come to Jakarta to conduct a feet cement protest in which they encase their feet in blocks of cement for days on end. So we're going to unpack the protest a little bit, observe the history, and see what they're fighting for.
One thing we realized hearing about, their justifications for their protests is how much we also need to help take part in taking care of our environment. And as Indonesian people, a lot of our identity is based on how beautiful our country is, and we actually need to, take part in that and preserve that in order to have that for our future generations.
So here's to it. Brief
background on this issue to those who are not that familiar about it yet. I think it is a pretty niche topic for our outside listeners or people who are not in the activism space in Indonesia currently.
I mean, even people in Indonesia, I think, might not know the intricacies of the story. So we want to really make sure to provide the context.
As much as we can. And with the best information and knowledge that we do know. A lot of these protesters are coming from the Kendeng region, which encompasses villages such as Rembang and Pati. They're mostly farmers who tend to grass fields, rice paddies, in order to feed their livestock. And they're heavily dependent on their natural surroundings, in particular their natural water resources.
And a lot of these farmers have been farming in this land for generations. So this is really the only life they know, right?
And this is the only way they can provide for their family. This struggle started in July 2014 when PT Semen Indonesia, the largest cement company in Indonesia and a state-owned enterprise. So for some of you American listeners who aren't familiar with the concept of state-owned enterprises, so it's basically a company built by the government, right? And so oftentimes they differ based on how much stake the government owns or if they're already, listed in the stock exchange market. So even though they're supposed to be an enterprise, which is to look for profit, they also are usually in spaces like infrastructure, like railroads, electricity, energy, usually sometimes public good type things that are for the greater good of the people that corporations might otherwise, not provide or provide at a very high price.
I mean, a lot of countries do this, right? Because they know that the government itself cannot always fulfill the needs of the market. They need some sort of enterprise entity to do it. So this is hardly anything new.
Yeah, and it's actually very popular in China. China SOEs are a big part of how China really grew really fast. And usually these kind of companies have a lot of weight in terms of legislative authority. And there's a minister for state-owned enterprises, Rini Sumarno, who's one of the more powerful ministers. So the state-owned enterprise minister is one of the most powerful ministers in the country.
Yeah.
So anyway, so they came in to this area in 2014 to conduct a feasibility study to build new factories and processing plants in the area. And from the beginning, the farmers of Kendeng rejected this idea and started, a legal appeals process in order to stop them from entering the area. Just because the nature of a cement factory, it destroys karst or these geological formations to take as a raw material for cement.
And actually, right, if I'm not mistaken, Kendeng is known for its deposits of karst, which is itself very valuable also for the local farmers because that's a water source.
Yeah.
It's a porous type of rock that contains a lot of healthy water, which the farmers need for farming, etc. So it's not just about wanting to stop the cement company from building stuff. They also need this formation. So from 2015 onwards, right, a year after PT Semen Indonesia has come into the scene, a lot of these farmers started doing really active protests, including erecting tents in front of the residence of the Central Javanese governor Ganjar Pranowo, who had given licenses and permits to PT Semen Indonesia.
The farmers of Kendeng also lobbied their case to local courts, which eventually led their case to be heard in the Supreme Court. In April 2016, the group of female farmers, which then the media started calling Kartini Kendeng, walked for 3 days from where they live in Rembang to Jakarta in order to conduct their first ever cement protests. So one thing as well is that they're often called the Kartini of Kendeng. The reason for that is that this area of villages includes Rambang, where the regency from which the husband of Kartini was regent of. Therefore, there's like kind of this history about Kartini being from that area, and these protesters are primarily led by women. For Indonesians, being called a Kartini means that you're a national hero, a feminist hero, a person who fights for the empowerment of women. And I don't think they usually reference themselves as Kartini. It's a name that's bestowed to them.
And it's bestowed with a certain sense of admiration, right? Because they are fighting for rights and they are putting their lives and livelihoods on the line for justice and rights.
Yeah.
And this was really big news. These 9 female farmers had their feet encased in cement over the course of 2 days, right across from the presidential palace where President Jokowi lives. And then finally, after 2 days, Jokowi and the government gave a response telling them that, yes, you will have a meeting with the president. And so they had their cement blocks broken apart and they stopped the protest.
Yeah, and after the meeting with the farmers, President Jokowi ordered an environmental study over the impact of cement mining in Kendeng. And he also halted new licenses and permits from being issued.
But the reality is the cement in Indonesia kept on doing
so what actually happened is Ganjar Pranowo was like, okay, these previous things are all cancelled. And then he just issued new ones. That's what he did.
He just ignored precedent, basically. Just like, you know what? Let's just start from scratch.
No, he's just like, okay, I accept that these things are no longer valid, but I will just issue new ones. That's what he did, which is like, the moratorium means to stop. Yeah. Like, also in 2016, that their camp that they built and, they protested at was burnt by local law enforcement.
Wow.
And this was a big thing because they've been squatting there for 3 years. And it's just burnt. Like, it's just really crazy to me how heartless people are, like, to our own people. And I think a big part of this is, like, the contradiction between a government that always says, oh, we want to support, the poor, the farmers of Indonesia, but then turn around and do these kind of things.
Yeah. It's a long history of legal tussle, physical tussle, to get us to this point in March when the second ever cement protest started. We're right now recording on Wednesday, March 22nd.
I know, we procrastinated.
So Wednesday, March 22nd, 9 days after the protest started, which started last week, on Monday, March 13th.
So I'm currently in front of Monas, the National Monument of Jakarta. It's also located in front of the presidential palace. Here we have over 20 people, 20 farmers from Kendeng Rembang in central Java protesting against the injustices they're facing with the forcible land takeover and removal of their land for a cement factory.
So you were actually there on Thursday and Friday, so you got to witness how people actually started the feet cement protest. Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened? How they did it?
Every day they add around 10 people whose feet, will also be encased in cement. And when I was there on Friday and Thursday, they already had about 50 to 60 people whose their feet was in, blocks. So first, each individual's calves and feet are wrapped in gypsum in order to protect their skin from cement, which is like, it stings. Like, it's not a passive thing, because I thought that it would be painless. It's just heavy. No, there's like a good amount of like burning sensation that's going on, because you're just not meant to have your feet encased in like 15 kilograms of cement.
No. Yeah.
So essentially volunteers mix cement from Cement Indonesia, the cement factory brands that
the one that the farmers are opposing.
The farmers are opposing. They mix it in front of the presidential palace, and like they freshly mix it, and then they like put this in the wooden box that creates a kind of like a casing for the feet and the gypsum. So they fill it. They kind of like shovel the cement into this casing to, submerge the feet.
I think I saw that they had their toes. That's the only thing peeking out.
Yeah, the only thing peeking out is like, so the gypsum doesn't cover their toes, and this is on purpose so that the doctors and nurses can test the mobility of the farmers, because otherwise they can't tell whether or not, that
the foot's still alive.
Yeah, the foot's still alive. And there's a lot of swelling that's going on as well.
I'm sure.
So the cement dries overnight, I think. Depends on how much mixture of water there is. But each block weighs 15 kilograms or 30 pounds, which means that each individual has 30 to 60 pounds in total on their feet. Like, you cannot lift your feet with that much weight.
That's so dangerous and so committed, right? This act of feet cementing.
I mean, I talked to their nurse about this, and she was telling me how if they're not, being properly monitored, they might, lose feeling in their feet, and if it's not properly attended to, lose their feet, like lose mobility in their feet.
So it has real physical risks.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have some sad news, which is that in the early hours of yesterday, March 21st,
one of the protesters, Ibu Patmi, who's 48 from the village of Pati, suddenly had a heart attack and unfortunately passed away en route to the hospital, and she's the first casualty of the protest. It's not exactly clear what happened, and whether it's linked to the protest. And so at this point, she was going to go home because she was one of the first protesters who had their feet encased. And she had her feet encased on Thursday, because I was actually there on the day that her feet were being encased.
Oh wow, so you saw it.
Yeah, because I didn't realize this at first because there were so many of them, I didn't meet all of them. But I took photographs of the day, right? And then so I posted an album of that, and then a few of the activists were like, oh, like, this is Ibu Patmi, this is a good photo of her, so they like took the photo and repurposed it. But yeah, like, so I met her and I took like portraits of her as well. So she had her feet encased on Thursday. I just realized this talking about it now. It's so crazy. She had one of the more sullen faces, I think, and she didn't really speak very much. And I dug into some photos, and I found a photo of her carrying the Indonesian flag in Pati, protesting from the very beginning, the cement factory.
Wow. So she's been in the struggle
for a long time.
And
I think just witnessing this in person, I don't know how you felt seeing the photos, but to me, I don't know, it was definitely one of the most physical and visceral thing I've seen, because just the commitment level it takes to do that. I think it's just, you can tell that these people are putting their lives on the line and their livelihoods on the line. And it's just incredible to me the lengths they have to go to get attention, because I know, and I think everybody knows, if they're not doing something this physical and this intense, that they would not get media attention.
No.
And the turnout there was just, there wasn't that many people. Perhaps it's because like it's during the office hours, right? But in comparison to the Women's March that we had, it's just a completely different feeling. The Women's March was sort of like a celebration and righteous anger, and there was sort of a happiness there. Like here, it was just like kind of this painful feeling about how sad it is to have the government that you love, the country that you love, ignore you and your plight, right? And I just wish that it had a lot more people showing up for them, because if like 1/10 of the people that showed up for the Women's March were here, we'd be happy, because I think it's important to show up for when it's not your personal issue is at stake. Totally. Your risk is not at stake. Like, sad to have like people with privilege being heard more. These people are having something like right next week that they need, that will define the rest of their lives and livelihoods,
Jadi Ibu dari desa mana di kabupaten mana?
So at this point, a regular on our podcast, Kate Walton, was actually also at the protest and interviewed one of the leaders of the protest, Ibu Sukina. So the soundbite is in Indonesian, and I'm gonna translate Kate's questions, and Stephanie's gonna take the answer.
Ibu bisa ceritakan sedikit tentang kehidupan di situ?
Kate asked Ibu Sukina, can you describe a little bit of life in Kendeng?
My life revolves around farming every day. Sometimes we might sell on the market on Mondays and Thursday, but that's only until 9 a.m. And the rest of the day we farm and grow grass to feed our livestock.
And so is the environment there still natural? Is it still beautiful?
In the past, yes, it was so beautiful, but with mining, it has become a lot less beautiful. And it will continue to become less beautiful if we have even more factories and more mines.
Do you think there is any positive impact from the cement factories?
For myself and other farmers, none whatsoever.
What is the purpose of this protest for you guys?
To meet with President Jokowi and ask him to shut down all factories and mines in Rembang and to stop all activities of that kind in Central Java.
Why do you, Ibu Sukina, want to participate in this protest yourself?
Because Mother Earth is like my own mother. If humans give birth to humans, then the earth gives birth to water, to plants that will feed the creatures of this earth.
How long do you want to stay protesting?
I don't know how long as it takes, I guess.
So actually, you, Kate, talked to Ibu Sukina, but you yourself also talked to Ibu Sukina, right?
Yeah, I was too shy to actually
hit
record. So I talked to Busukina, and being the first time I met her, I kind of felt awkward. Mm-hmm. And I had a few people from the Women's March who were also there with me. But one of the things we talked about trying to cheer them, we're like, do you want a manicure?
City folks.
Just city folk. And she was like, and they all just laughed at us, and they're like, oh, untuk apa lamba? Like what for? They found the idea to be really funny and kind of ridiculous. And we're just like, we're sorry, we're city folk.
I'm glad they were at least not offended.
And then she was like, oh, nggak apa-apa. Ya, wong kota ya, wong desa ya. Jadi wong desa. So what she's essentially saying is that it's okay for city folk to remain city folk, and for people in the village to remain from the village, as long as city folk are not forced to be village folks and village folks are not forced to be city folks, it's okay. There's a balance to be made there. Mm-hmm. It's not that she's anti-capitalist, but she wants the natural order of things to not be forced upon them.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, that little analogy kind of made sense, because she was talking about if you come to Kendeng, or if you come you see, even city folk would want to have the beautiful environment of Indonesia to be preserved, because that's such a big part of our identity, and she wants to also have that for the future of generations, not just for her but for us, mm-hmm. a city folk as well,
Speaking about the community in Kendeng and how this is their overarching philosophy, right? That we have to be responsible to the environment, and we can't just throw away what Mother Earth has given us just for the sake of economic progress. I did a little bit of historical research and discovered a very interesting part of Indonesian activist history that we don't really know about, which is the Samin community and movement. It started in the late 1800s by a Javanese farmer from the Kendeng region called Samin Surosentiko. So at this time, Indonesia was still under Dutch colonial rule, and the Dutch government has just taken ownership of all the natural resources that the local farmers depended on. Samin, as one of the farmers, was really unhappy with how the Dutch not only has taken ownership but also started imposing taxes to the locals who have been farming and using this land for hundreds of years.
The Dutch.
Yes.
Never forget.
So, in protest against the Dutch government, Samin started to preach...
This is like the Boston Tea Party movement.
Yeah, like an underground activist movement from the masses, right? Mm-hmm. He started to teach a philosophy of non-violent civic resistance. Mm-hmm. So, not paying taxes.
The OG Gandhi.
Holding protests and demonstrations against the government, really being anti-colonialist and anti-capitalist, because that was what's threatening the environment at this point. The movement became a larger community, and Samin became an almost cult-like figure as the leader. And by the early 1900s, there were rumors that there are now 5,000 members in the Samin community. And of course, the Dutch began to fear Samin's growing influence. So in 1907, they exiled Samin and his followers to the city of Padang in Sumatra, a completely different island with a completely different landscape. And so, basically in 1914, Samin died in exile and he never went back to Central Java. But today, 100 years, almost a century, more than a century after Samin's death, there's still the Samin community who still believes in non-violence resistance for the sake of fighting for the environment. So I think it's important for us to discuss this issue and hear the concerns of the people, right? I mean, these farmers are literally the backbone of our economy. They provide the food and resources that we need in order to grow as a maturing democracy and maturing country. And so if we ignore their needs, and these are real needs and rights, what's the future, right? Like, where's the future of the nation?
I guess to add to what Sweden is saying is that I don't think like being for the environment is anti-economic growth, and even one of the primary organizers actually said in his oration that they are not against economic growth. Like, it's just that we need to make sure that it's done in a sustainable fashion, in a way that doesn't erase the beauty of the environment for the future generations. And I think we need to, take heed of that message.
I think we as citizens of Indonesia need to protect our environment better and support those who are doing the good fight, right? Because if we lose the environment, then we lose the very nature of our identity as Indonesians, I feel like. We are lucky enough to live in one of the most biodiverse, lush, beautiful landscapes in the world. And we are risking it every day when we don't address these kind of issues.
It's just crazy to me, like, how much time they have to spend, how much toil they have to suffer for their voices to even be heard by the president who won't even meet them. Thank you so much for listening to us this week. We hope you kind of took away something from it. As always, music credits to Jazzart, Ryan Little, and Broke for Free.
And if you haven't followed us on YouTube, our latest channel, you should definitely follow us.
We're also still going to be on SoundCloud, but we want to highlight YouTube a bit more.
And also, it's a lot easier, I guess, to listen on YouTube than say like open up SoundCloud or go into iTunes and download the podcast. So we're trying to make it easier for you guys to listen, to enjoy the episodes.
Yeah. And once again, we always really want feedback. So email us at dialogikapodcast@gmail.com, or send us a Facebook message or comment on YouTube.
And as always, we'll have resources and links at our website, dialogika.id. And
thanks so much for listening.